Yo, 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 and welcome back to Creeps and Crimes
Podcast.
I'm Taylor.
I'm Morgan. Happy Thursday and happy episode 241.
Oh, yeah. Before we even get into this episode and the intro, this is going to be a two-parter.
Yes, it is.
It's a two-parter, and
It's a group project.
It's a group project, and it's not like a two-parter how you're expecting. We wrote it how BTK was, unfortunately. Not for you. Like these are like the peak of the peaks when it comes to your episode. For us, it's very, and I gotta tell you guys, we've taken a hit.
Yeah, and we both are on our period.
We lined up.
Synced. Finally
Perfect.
synced.
Yep, they did it. Proud of you.
Thanks so much.
Very, very happy for this combined bloodletting ceremony. Very glad that you guys could be here for it.
Oh, shit.
Let us know if you are synced with us as well. Bestie sync here.
Bestie sync going on.
Yeah, a little bestie sync moment.
So we're hitting hard.
Yeah, my hair can't be up in any way. Nothing can touch me. I'm wearing Logan's sweats, and it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
You actually look cute.
Oh, thanks.
Well, I tried this little hairstyle today.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, tell them about your
And
hairstyle.
this TikTok video, it's like you combine two ponies and then you do like a slick half up one side and then use the other half of the combined pony for the other side. And then you flip the two ponies underneath. And it's supposed to be like just like effortless volume. Well, mine went fucking sideways to the right. Like
It was pointing to the right. It said
Yeah.
blinker on.
like a full angle, and I was like, okay. And then I tried to undo it, and it was all tangled mess, and it was just.
And then your hands have been above your head for way too
Yes.
long. Yeah.
And then I'm just like, I just start
You just
ripping
rip
my
it
hair.
out. I
And
don't
I'm like,
care
okay,
anymore.
I don't care.
I don't even care anymore.
So yeah,
You want to know what I had
Wasted
today for
curl.
the first time in my entire life?
what you had like to
What
eat
I ate today.
for the first time ever.
First time ever in my entire life.
What? I feel like you've had everything.
I had for the first time ever in my entire life a burger from Hardee's.
Oh yeah, I've never had that.
I was like, that's like what their commercials are about, but I've only ever had breakfast from there.
Yeah, me
And-
too, because I didn't have
Yes.
a party. So when I came down here, you're like breakfast.
We gotta go get
Sammy's.
biscuits
Yeah.
and gravy immediately.
Yeah.
I got on this TikTok hole last night, and I ended up in people that have been in prison for like over 15 years, like getting out of prison and like
like,
eating
making prison food?
No, like eating food, outside food for like the first time. It started with a guy with a triple dipper at Chili's, and I must say that he got all the wrong things.
Oh, that's such
Yeah,
a
he
shame.
just like didn't know, like he doesn't know.
What's your food of choice? Like, okay, if you haven't
If I've been in prison
anything
for
that's
27
been
years,
new for 27 years, probably
I want a coffee.
I wouldn't have had Chick-fil-A. So I would
No.
like to try that.
Yeah.
And then I would do a Crunchwrap Supreme.
Oh, wow, 100%.
And then I would do a Sonic Blue Powerade slushie.
Yeah.
With nerds.
Yeah. I would definitely want like a matcha probably.
Five
But like
Guys?
Five Guys? Yeah, definitely. I don't know what I would want. Maybe I just want a steak. Like I don't care. I would like a steak.
Yeah.
Just something that you don't get. But like, because they wouldn't get steaks in prison.
I don't know. I don't think so. I was watching some videos.
I
I was also on Prison Talk. And I don't know why.
like, how are they on their phone in prison also?
that was what all the comments were.
Yeah.
It was like, why is this in 4K?
Are you allowed to have?
Why is your camera better than mine? It's like
In
not
prison.
even like a throwaway phone. Like it's like a legit phone. And no, they're not allowed. They sneak it. But yeah, I was watching this guy who got out and he was making prison food for his family. And it was like ramen. You like put just a little bit of water to soften it up, and then you know how it's folded?
Yeah.
You unfold it.
Got him?
And then you put like pickles on it
Okay.
and the ramen seasoning, and I want to say like sausage, like Vienna
Okay.
sausages.
Vienna sausages?
And then
I do
you-
be fucking up a Vienna
Then you
sausage.
refold it
Okay.
and you eat it like a sandwich.
You know what? You had me with pickles and everything else. I haven't had a Vienna sausage in probably 15 years.
I've never had one. That's one thing I've
Dude,
never had.
my dad be fucked.
never
to
had-
this day, my dad has them at his office in his desk.
Yeah, I've never had that. I've never had Spam. I've never had like tuna in a bag. I've never had any
I've
of
had
that.
tuna in a bag. Anyways, I had Hardee's hamburger for the first time ever. Last night, I was watching Prison Talk. This guy, he got out. He's like, all I've wanted is a Hardy burger since I've been in. So he goes and gets a Hardee's burger. If you're from like the West, Carl's Jr. I turned to Logan. This had to be like 12:30 because he was watching this show that he couldn't get himself to turn off. So I roll over to him. I'm like, you know what I've never had ever a day in my life? Hardee's lunch. I've only ever had like Hardee's breakfast. And I was like, and you know what I would do for a Coke from Hardee's? Because no, I'll fight anybody on this. Hardee's Coke is the best drive-through Coke.
Yeah, I've just never been there enough to
That
even
there
argue.
is. Like, it's the best. They've got the wide straws. Like, they're just like a
yeah.
millimeter, just
Get a little bit more
bigger.
Jew in the sip.
And they have like I mean, it is the bubbliest one. It's like kin to a McDonald's Sprite. And don't get me wrong, I love Dr. Pepper from Chick-fil-A. I love a Coke, a Sprite from McDonald's. But if someone was like, hey, you're going to die tomorrow, where do you want this Coke from? I'm like, drive to fucking Hardee's. Like, don't even talk to me.
Maybe I need to go there.
Yeah, you definitely do. I would offer you a sip that's left over there, but it's not as good. You can't. There's a big Hardee's. That's a medium, by the way.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, dude, that's a medium.
That's huge.
But anyways, it was good. Like, and you know what shocked me?
What was
Their
the burger,
fries.
like square. I'm thinking like
No,
Wendy's
not
square.
Wendy's. It's like a big circle, and it's a thick patty, and it tastes like someone grilled it. It was delicious, and the buns themselves were like voluptuous, like really squishy and big. Like,
It was good.
it was really good, and they had extra pickles on that thing, like probably like 20 fucking pickles. I almost got to the point where I was like, hold on,
I gotta take some pickles
do I
off.
just keep eating the pickles? Like, am I only is this a pickle burger?
It's my dream.
Oh yeah, seriously. And then I got onions on it, like all the other things. It was delicious.
You know what I've been wanting to make, and I saw people do it?
What?
Kool-Aid pickles. Remember we had
yeah.
them?
Oh, the
So you do
two-liter.
like, you pour out half of the pickle juice in the jar. You put your Kool-Aid mix in there, like a cup of sugar.
Oh.
And then you pour it back into the jar and let it sit for 48 hours.
Okay, well,
so
we could do
simple.
that.
Like we could do
Yeah,
that.
we could definitely do that. We should. Anyways, their fries.
Yeah,
Their
what are their
fries
fries like?
shocked the shit out of me, dude. They were delicious.
Straight, thick, thin.
They were
curly.
they were just a little bit bigger than McDonald's, not as perfectly shaped, but they had the consistency with the like crispiness of a McDonald's, but consistency of a Wendy's.
Okay.
Banger. Super
Yeah.
salty. So salty. I loved every second of it. I cannot believe I'm in this club now. I finally have made it.
I think I'm going to join it tomorrow.
I think you're gonna have.
I don't know
to,
where the
dude.
nearest Hardee's is. I'll join
There's
it.
one up north.
I think
there's
there's-
one down there.
Yeah, I think there is one right
There's
there.
got to be down. What kind of shocked me. I don't know if maybe it's because like in Cleveland, it's actually my extended family that owns all the Hardee's in Cleveland. Knowing that I'm like directly related to that, it affects me in any way. We're still paying full price, but there's a ton of fucking Hardee's in Cleveland. Like you could turn a corner, it's like McDonald's. There's always a Hardee's
Yeah.
there. But up here, Baskin Robbins, never see 'em. Steak and Shake, never see 'em. Hardee's, rare, hard to find.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
There's one Steak and Shake. Well, now there's one on campus.
yeah.
Did you see?
They got rid of the one over there on Merchants.
There's one in Turkey Creek. One Steak and Shake all the way out in Turkey Creek.
Yeah.
I don't know where Baskin Robbins is. Baskin Robbins is
Turkey
like,
Creek, it's the only one.
and it's like conjoined with something now. Too.
Yeah,
it's like something. and
Baskin
something.
Robbins is owned by Dunkin'.
Okay, that's what
Yeah,
it is.
that's what it is. We're CEOs of periods. We're going to get to this case. We got a long intro to get you into it that we just need to discuss some things. We kind of gave you a little blurb in the beginning because I didn't want someone to just skip through and move on over it. I think there was something I was going to say. Oh, today, my Crime House series launched
Yes.
this week. Next Tuesday. The
today.
trailer. So episodes will be released every Tuesday for the next 6 weeks. And if you guys like it and engage with it enough, they're going to renew me.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
So, you know,
They'll renew her.
let's hope so. So go give me a look.
You
can
guys
go
are
follow
loyal.
Crime House.
But you know what you're not loyal to is my fucking reel that flopped. I hate you all for
Mine
it.
was even worse than yours.
I was like, I'm embarrassed.
And I'm like really offended. I think we're kind of shadow banned.
I was like, I literally have like 100 likes. And I was like, I worked so hard on
No, I know you did. You did. And you did a voiceover and everything. Like, it looked
well, I
really
know
good.
the voiceovers don't help because it makes that audio an original audio. And I
yeah.
know that doesn't help.
Yeah. Did you do the voiceover with, hey, by the way, did you see that we got access to the new editing app that Meta made that's like a copycat of CapCut?
No.
We have it. I downloaded it. I haven't touched it yet. I'm
Was
scared
it on
of
like
it.
our Instagram
Yeah.
notifications? Because my notification was like boosting for like you're eligible for this
The
payment
boost.
opportunity
Yeah.
boost or whatever.
Whatever.
That's what was at the top of. Yeah, no, I haven't seen that. What's it called? Do you know?
I think it's literally called Edits. Hold on, I'll tell you. I downloaded
So
it.
simple. I love that for them.
Let's
that they
see.
cop that.
Yeah,
name.
literally Edits. Right there on the bottom.
Okay, well, I'll try that my next reel. But
Yeah, but okay, we're gonna hit you with it.
if you're driving, throw that shit on cruise control.
If you got a glass, pour that shit up.
And let's get creepy.
Okay, so as you see from the title that you already read before you started this episode, we are going to be covering the Ruby Franke case. And like we said, it's kind of like the same way that we rolled out BTK without the 5-parter situation going on. This is 2 parts, that's it.
Yeah, so we were split like kind of like good side, bad side, but
Just going off of BTK because we did dark side, good side.
yeah, but more so it's gonna be like this first part is gonna be what we saw, what we know of these two, like from a camera's point of view, like what they
the public
portrayed
knew.
to the public. And then next week we'll go behind the
scenes, behind the lens of it all. So that's the 2-part version of it, because Morgan talked about this like 3 months ago. Morgan was like,
right when that documentary
came out, and Morgan was like, I really think we need to do this because it's also a trifecta. More
so part 2.
Right. This is all public facing in this first part, and it's imperative to the story and what you're going to hear in the next part, because, you know, if we're talking about one event that happened publicly, we're talking about 50 things that happened from that event privately in the Frankie's life next week. So get your notebooks together, open them up.
And at no point in this episode, do not allow yourself to think that we are portraying them
feeling bad
and in a positive manner and feeling bad or remorse. Like
we're
is just
truly trying to do public,
yes,
how the public saw it.
Public versus private.
Right. It's hard. We literally in the break between the intro and now, me and Morgan were sitting here talking, and we're like, we don't know how we're gonna do this.
No, we have no idea.
I'm so
how we're gonna keep our
mad.
mouths
Like
shut.
I dreamt about it all night. I've been madder than hell for like 2 days.
What made you think of doing this?
Well, it was like Mother's Day. So I was like,
yeah.
you know, who is the killer mom right now? Because the first killer mom we did was Diane Downs.
Yeah.
And that was like episode 2. That wasn't on Mother's Day. And so I was looking for cases, and everything that was coming up was Ruby Franke. And I was like, I've watched a documentary. Morgan's watched a documentary. We followed it in real time as it happened. Towards middle of last week, I started pulling like a bunch of articles just to check through, and I was listing them out, and then finally I took it to Morgan, and I was like, Morgan, how would you feel? How would you feel about this? I got these articles.
And then also, are you gonna compliment me on my notes?
Oh, Morgan has killed it in the notes department.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was matching fonts with Taylor.
She
I was
was.
matching highlights, color codes. I was doing my very, very best.
And it was a very, very much Taylor note set. There's 3 sets of notes for this.
She was explaining, because we have like these fast notes, and we were breaking it into the good, the bad,
The scripts and all the things.
And she had sent me a text the other day and was like, so this is what I'm thinking, like, just do your fast notes, and then we're gonna split it into this and this and this, and then we'll pull from there and then separate and twist and do a 360 and jump upside down,
the mirror.
do 5 cartwheels, and I'm like, okay, that is definitely some
enough.
Taylor brain notes going on. We're gonna have to call.
We're gonna have
I
to
have
get
no
this
idea what you
together.
said.
I was like, just call me call me when you get home, because I don't even know where to begin.
Especially
to
looking
this.
at them on my phone, it was just
Oh yeah, the phone would be impossible to read this shit. So this is the public facing, in front of the lens side of the Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt case, part 1. It's 10:46 a.m. on Wednesday, August 30th, 2023, when a 12-year-old boy knocks on a neighbor's door in Ivins, Utah, asking for 2 favors. Number 1, to be taken to the nearest police station, and number 2, for something to eat and drink. He was kind, seemingly well-dressed, and comfortable speaking with strangers, a true testament to the community that he was raised in. Almost 4 hours northeast of Ivins in Springville, Utah, which is where our story begins. Springville is a city, I want to say Springville because I'm so southern, but I think it's literally Springville.
it's definitely Springville.
Springville is a city in Utah County, Utah, with a population of in 2020, it had a population of 3,500, 200,000. Can you help me?
35,268 people.
Thank you so much. It's considered to be a bedroom community for commuters that work in the Provo and Salt Lake City areas. I think it's Orem too. I think I meant to put Provo Orem. And seen as it's a suburb, of the Provo Orem area and less than an hour drive south of Salt Lake City. So that's why it's considered a bedroom community. People just have their houses there and then they commute to work. The first European explorer arrived in 1776. You hear the eagle screeching, but the area actually became a part of the wagon route, often referred to as the Mormon Road, that Mormon pioneers and 49ers used to travel through southern Utah, northern Arizona, southern Nevada, and southern California. It became incorporated in February of 1853, not long after it was settled by 8 pioneer families. Originally called Hobble Creek because a horse belonging to one of these early exploration teams lost its pair of iron hobbles, which are the restraints tied to the horse's forelegs while the team was camping next to a creek. So they called it Hobble Creek. Very creative.
Very creative.
They were really thinking big.
Yeah.
You know? Yep. But as this area grew, it was renamed Springville because of the many freshwater springs in the area, particularly near the fort. Springville is often described as an idyllic town and community. Everyone is kind. You become very close friends with your neighbors. Your children play outside until the streetlights come on with all of the neighborhood children. There are cookouts when it's warm and crockpot nights when it's cold. No one is a stranger and everyone is willing to help each other when they need it. People just kind of watch out for each other. It's peaceful, it's quiet, it's clean, and it's safe. Perfection is the goal and what everyone strives for. People here are just happy, which landed it the nickname Happy Valley. No one wants to leave Happy Valley, so they literally do not. If people want a new house, bigger or smaller, they will just house hop in the community, but very rarely ever move. And there's 5 main neighborhoods that surround a church, and most people just kind of hop back and forth between these neighborhoods. And the reason for this, many people will say, is because Utah is the capital for the Mormon Church. According to Brannon, who is a resident of Springville and a local therapist interviewed in the Hulu documentary on this case titled Devil in the Family, The Fall of Ruby Franke, quote, Mormons are taught that in order to get to the highest degree of glory, you should strive for perfection. You are always supposed to be doing missionary work to show the world how perfect our lives are. End quote. And also I want to add here that our primary source for this entire 2-parter is going to be that Hulu documentary, but we probably have close to 200 total sources, including articles, other YouTube videos, interviews, articles that are archived back from 2015 and beyond, Ancestry.com, newspaper, anything that you could think of.
Yeah.
We've got probably over 300 sources for this, but we do want to make sure we're giving major props because we do not want to get our asses sued to that Hulu documentary. So everybody just round of applause for the Hulu documentary.
It was great.
Amen. Great. Okay.
10 out of 10 recommend.
10 out of 10. So anyways, Brandon says you are supposed to be doing your missionary work to show the world how perfect your lives are. And this is why over the years we have seen such an influx of Mormon influencers starting on YouTube, getting fame on Instagram, and creating an entire community on TikTok. With social media, it became just as important as your perfectionism and missionary work within your neighborhoods and communities to be broadcasted and uploaded to all of social media platforms. And M. Russell Ballard, who is an apostle of the LDS Church, which is referenced often for this quote because it's very infamous, I guess I'll say, where he says, quote, this is the most important work, to join the conversation by participating on the internet, which birthed the Mormon Life push on all of these platforms, specifically though in the family vlogging category of it all. To the Mormon Church, as heard in that quote from Ballard, and these families, by doing this, by posting on social media, they are doing, quote, God's work.
Being Mormon or a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church, is a unique blend of Christian beliefs and specific doctrines that are centered around a man named Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon that emphasizes family, personal growth, and serving others. The doctrines of Mormonism began in the 1820s with Joseph Smith, who was a farm boy from western New York during the Second Great Awakening. This was a Protestant religious revival during the late 18th and early 19th century in the United States, sparked by revivals and very emotional preaching that led to several reform movements with an emphasis on salvation by institutions. At the age of 14, Smith was determined to figure out which church taught the quote, true doctrine of God. Because though he always believed that God existed, he was confused by what he believed to be contradictions in the beliefs of the different churches in his area. So he began praying about which denomination he should join, when he claims that he received a vision from God in the spring of 1820, which he called the first vision. Smith said that God, the Father, and his Son, Jesus Christ, appeared to him and instructed him to join none of the churches, quote, because they were all wrong.
Bold.
The first vision would be followed by several.
Or you know what, actually, maybe, yeah, everyone's wrong. Everyone's wrong.
Everyone's wrong, but
no one can be right.
Because no one can be right.
Because you cannot comprehend it to the fullest extent with your little pea-sized human brain.
Yeah, it could be everyone's wrong because nobody can be right. Mm-hmm. Or it could be everyone's wrong, including you.
We're all wrong that's here. The point. Everyone's wrong, period. Not even you, not even anyone. As much as you swear to God, don't do that though.
Yeah.
As much as you swear that you're right and that you've got it locked in, you have to leave room for something to be
for sure
right in a different way.
Right.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know.
We're not going to get into it. We're not going to get into it.
Hot take, yeah. The first vision would be followed by several angelic visitations that eventually led to him being told by the angels that God would use him to reestablish the true Christian church. In 1823, during one of these angelic visitations, he said an angel first showed him the location of some golden plates that were buried deep in a nearby hill that is now referred to as Cumorah. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Which is a drumlin in Palmyra, New York.
And apparently a drumlin, that's an Irish word, but it's an old ass glacier that created a random mound in the middle of nowhere. So it literally looks like a covered up pyramid.
It's so hard for me to even comprehend that glaciers were in New York.
No, I'm sorry. Wait, what?
Yeah, what?
Wait, what are you talking about?
Makes no sense.
But yeah.
After finally obtaining the plates in 1827, Smith began decoding the ancient writings found on these plates and dictating the text of the Book of Mormon in 1828, with the assistance of Martin Harris and Oliver Cowdery, which they completed in June of 1829. After this, he claims the plates were then returned to the angel, so he no longer had possession of them, after he finished the translations that would later be published in the Book of Mormon in 1830. The Book of Mormon claims to be a chronicle of early Israelites who left the Near East and traveled to the Americas, beginning in 600 BC, with the departure from Jerusalem of the family of a prophet named Lehi, and their journey by sails to the Americas. The preachings claim that once the prophet and his family arrived in the Americas, there were people here, aka Native Americans, that allegedly believed in Jesus hundreds of years before his birth. Then, Jesus personally visited them in the Americas after his resurrection, but ultimately they lost their Christianity after generations of wars and apostasy.
Yeah, apostasy, I guess.
AKA the abandonment of faith. A year before publishing the Book of Mormon, Smith began baptizing new converts that began following him, and after its release, he officially organized the Church of Christ. It's no secret that his followers see him as a modern-day prophet, which obviously caused a lot of criticism and pushback from people in Palmyra, New York, and the surrounding areas where he would preach. So to escape the persecution and confrontation, Smith and his church members, the Mormons, left the area and moved west to Kirtland, Ohio, and then to Jackson County, Missouri, where they planned to establish a permanent New Jerusalem, or City of Zion. But that didn't last long, because in 1833 they were expelled from Jackson County, and 5 years later the governor of Missouri issued an extermination order against all Mormons, forcing them to flee the state. The church then relocated to Illinois, where they bought a small town and renamed it Nauvoo. Imagine a time where you could just buy a town.
No, literally.
Where they lived
we even buy houses.
Where they lived with really no problems for a few years. But in 1844, after lots of tension between the Mormons and the neighboring towns came to head, Joseph Smith was killed by a mob. The church then changed their name to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints under the new prophet Brigham Young, and under his direction immigrated to what became the Utah Territory, where the church began the open practice of plural marriage, a form of religious polygamy that Smith had instituted in Nauvoo.
And I think it's actually now like not.
It is not associated with it.
Yeah, it's not associated with it.
Correct. In Orthodox Mormonism, the term God refers to the biblical God the Father, which Latter-day Saints refer to as Elohim. The term Godhead refers to a council of three distinctive divine persons consisting of God the Father, Jesus or Jehovah in Latter-day Saints, and the Holy Ghost. So their Holy Trinity. But they also believe that there are other gods and goddesses outside of Godhead, such as Heavenly Mother, who is married to God the Father. And according to their teachings, faithful Latter-day Saints may attain godhood in the afterlife because Joseph Smith taught that God was once a man on another planet before being exalted to godhood. But ultimately, Mormons believe in a friendly universe governed by a God whose aim is to bring his children to immortality and eternal life, and describes itself as falling within world Christianity, but as a distinct restored dispensation, and characterizes itself as the only true form of Christian religion since the time of a great apostasy that began not long after the ascension of Jesus Christ, which they claim involved the corruption of the pure original Christian doctrine with Greek and other philosophies. Let's just put it like this. There are a lot of moving pieces and a lot of subgroups, religions within Mormonism, the Latter-day Saints. And even after reading hours and hours worth of articles about it, we both still don't fully understand because it's kind of all over the place. But here are the highlights of what someone who is a member of the church is expected to do and believe in their everyday life. Follow the law of health. Abstain from alcohol, tobacco, tea, coffee, and other unhealthy substances. Observe the Sabbath. Refrain from unnecessary work and dedicate time to worship, studying, and family on Sundays. Tithing. Give 10% of your income to the church. Morality and honesty. Living a life of integrity and adhering to moral principles, including the law of chastity. So no sex at all outside of marriage. Family and community. Prioritizing family relationships, participating in church events and activities, and serving your community. Conservative dress and grooming, like wearing your garments under your clothing at all time. Dress modestly and dress well, be clean. Family home evening. There must be a weekly evening dedicated to family education and bond building between the family members. Sacrament meeting attendance. Participating in the sacrament meeting each week where members partake in the sacred bread and water ceremony. Eternal marriage. So when you get married, you're eternally, so even in the afterlife, married to your partner, and the ceremony in the temple is sealed by divine authority. Eternal progression is belief that individuals continue to grow and develop spiritually even after death. And missionary work. For a certain amount of time in every Mormon's life, mostly after high school and before college, they are required to take a long mission, sometimes up to a year, depending on circumstances. And I also think it varies by male or female. I think men might do 2 years, women usually a year and a half, to spread the gospel and invite people to join the church. And as Taylor discussed in the beginning, using social media to show off your perfect and happy, idyllic life is a form of missionary work according to the church. Thus the birth of modern day Mormon family channels. And also, like, your body is treated as a temple. And you are to be perfect, which is why we see in like The Secret Life of Mormon Wives, which I know people are like, that doesn't depict like real, your common day Mormon, but they can go do lip filler and Botox and everything because they are, it's their perfection of their own image.
You're perfecting the things that need to be perfected. Now, one of these family channels, which we are all here to talk about, is 8 Passengers. So let's get into how 8 Passengers came to be. Born in Utah on January 18th, 1982, as one of 5 children belonging to Jennifer and Chad Griffins, Ruby Franke was raised in the LDS Church with her siblings Ellie, Julie, Bonnie, and Bo, and all 3 of the sisters, so the first 3 names I listed off, they also, I don't know if they still are, but were influencers as well. There is not much out there, or easily accessible, I should say, about Ruby's early life, but what we do know is she was a very driven person, always striving to be the best that she could. She was very religious, raised in a house of missionaries, and if she wanted something, she would do whatever it took to get it. When Ruby was 18 years old, she met Kevin Frankie in August of 2000. He was 21 at the time, about to turn 22. They were both in the LDS church, and he became very interested in Ruby. According to Kevin at the time, she had about 5 different guys interested in courting her, and in the Hulu documentary, he talks about this chart or table she had on like a poster board inside of her closet. And like on the left side of it, it listed off every single thing that she wanted in a guy, from looks to personality to how they are in their everyday life, like their routines, to careers and like especially there was like a lot of spots about religion in it. And then at the top of the chart were like the 5 guys, including Kevin, and she would like highlight how much of this, or if they even did have this characteristic about them. So that's what we're meaning when we're like, she knew what she wanted and she was getting that thing.
Yeah,
she worked really hard towards that. Kevin actually took notes on this chart or table that was in her closet and began working really hard to meet the criteria Ruby had laid out for herself. He explains in that documentary on Hulu that he was very insecure his entire life and was willing to fit whatever mold he needed to in order to better himself. And that's one of the things that initially attracted him to this confident and steadfast Ruby. She would tell him exactly what she wanted, and that's what he wanted in a wife, because he could fit a mold. He just needed to be told what to do. And vice versa. That's what Ruby was looking for in a man, someone that would listen to her.
Someone that would be her perfect man.
Her perfect man. So it was no surprise that within 2 months of them, meeting each other and starting dating, in October of 2000, Ruby and Kevin, they get engaged, and quickly after that, they get married on December 28th, 2000, so only 4 months after meeting for the first time. Between 2003 and 2013, the Frankies had 6 children, 2 boys, 4 girls, and this is oldest to youngest, Sherry, Chad, and then the youngest 4 we're only going to be referring to as the letter of their first names, because the oldest of the 4 just recently, like a month ago, turned 18, and 18 to me is not even an adult yet, so I'm not blowing anybody's spot. So we have Sherry, Chad, A, J, R, and E. Ruby and Kevin loved being parents. It was something that sat at the center of their religion, as they were raised to believe that the ultimate thing that you can become in this world is a parent. Her children said that growing up, they truly felt like they had the best life and family. Kevin was a professor of engineering at BYU, and Ruby was a stay-at-home mom. The couple did really good for their family. They were not rich, but they were not poor, and they lived a very, quote, simple but fun lifestyle, according to Chad, the eldest son, but second oldest overall. In Kevin's interview in that Hulu documentary, he says, Ruby's sole ambition was to be seen as the perfect mother, but she felt like she wasn't getting enough praise or attention for it in her church, family, and close circles. So in early 2015, Ruby created and launched a YouTube channel focused on her family and their unfiltered life with 6 children, along with parenting tips, which she called 8 Passengers, as a reflection of their family of 8 that fit perfectly into this minivan that they were driving at the time, just kind of driving down the road of life together. Ruby would post 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Every video was posted at 6 a.m. sharp. That's hard.
Yeah.
Plus 6 kids. I have 3 cats, and we post 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Babes, hurting.
And a video once a week, twice.
Yeah, exactly. In a video that was posted to the channel, Ruby explains that she wanted this channel to become a ray of sunshine in people's lives, to show the world that happy families are a reality. Quote, in a time where all we do as a society is criticize each other and make each other feel bad, end quote. According to Chad, nothing was forced. Ruby truly just wanted to document the family's life with small hints of religion here and there. With Ruby saying in a 2016 interview with the Salt Lake City news channel KSL that although the family wasn't, quote, loud and in your face about their faith, one benefit to their social media presence was being able to share beliefs, quote, in a way that they normally wouldn't through their weekly routines and practices. On Sundays, the family would go to church. The rest of the week, they would have family scripture study and pray before going to bed. And when they woke up in the mornings, they had normal childhoods. They would go outside and play with each other, go play with the neighbors. They would go on hikes. They'd go do things, etc. And Ruby just filmed every single single moment of their lives. And I mean everything. At first, there were only about 5 subscribers on this channel, but after about 6 months, that number skyrocketed in July of 2015 after one video went viral. And that's all it takes. That's how we got here, okay? In which Ruby filmed her toddler climbing out of the crib all on her own. That racked up almost 1 million views. So going from 5 followers to getting 1 million views on something,
especially YouTube,
in 2015. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And this allowed them to monetize 8 Passengers for the first time. The family began getting noticed when they were out driving at the mall, at church, and so on. Therefore, it was time for them to get an LLC owned by Ruby and Kevin, Ruby being the CEO and listing all 6 of their children as employees. According to an article that was released by KSL News on January 16th, 2016, 1 year after the launch of the channel. By that point, they had 32,000 subscribers and were averaging about 350 new subscribers daily. Then in August of 2016, they hit over 400,000 subscribers, and before they knew it, in 2017, they were at 1 million. People were obsessed with the family, but specifically Ruby and Chad. The 2 of them would get stopped by fans the most often, and any videos that those 2 were the main focus of would do the best. They went from their first paycheck from YouTube being only $85 to getting $2,000, then $8,000, then $20,000, and then over $100,000. And I'm not talking like yearly, I'm talking monthly, $100,000. I would cut my arm off for that.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. The Frankie family became one of the most successful stories in YouTube family vlogging history. To them, they were sharing the goodness of God and Christianity with the world, and in return, God was blessing their family with abundance. This was a part of their mission, their faith. On Mother's Day 2018, YouTube showcased Ruby in their Mother's Day post, and that is truly when she felt like she had done it. She had made it. She felt like she had achieved her main goal, which was always being recognized for her ability as a parent, but becoming America's mother. By January 2020, using their income from 8 Passengers YouTube channel, the Frankies were able to sell their 4-bed, 3-bath, 3,124 square foot home where they had started their channel in 2015 and buy a 7-bed, 6-bath, 5,600 square foot home, just a few streets over from their old house and still really close nearby their church or temple. It was around this same time, but technically it kind of started in early 2019, that people began to see a different side of the Frankies' life. One that was still true to their mission of showing the ups and downs of their family life, and that was Chad's behavioral issues. He would have been approximately 13 or 14 years old at this point. He had begun having issues not only at home but at school, leading him to get suspended on several occasions and eventually expelled. Ruby and Kevin were often candid about their punishment style, such as taking away technology, sports, and other fun things like extracurriculars. However, nothing was working for this rebellious teenage boy. Many of their followers would comment about their experiences with having teenage sons, brothers, etc., and sharing an understanding and giving some tips and tricks to the family. But still, nothing they did was working for Chad. It was at this point that Ruby and Kevin sent Chad off to a wilderness therapy program, which they were actually documenting in real time on 8 Passengers channel. And after returning home, though, thinking like, okay, that had to have done it, Chad was just even more angry that they had done this to him.
Has there ever been a success story from the wilderness therapy program?
So. Sound off in the comments, but no.
No, I'd love to know.
There's not. Desperate, Ruby and Kevin, quote, needed someone to really put the hammer down on him. Finally, in the beginning of fall 2019, Ruby's best friend, Paige, who was often featured on 8 Passengers YouTube channel, recommended that she reach out to a woman named Jodi Hildebrandt.
Jodi Nan Hildebrandt was born in Tucson, Arizona in 1969 to parents Jay and Florence Hildebrandt. Jay was a pilot for the Air Force when he met his future wife, Florence, who was working a teaching job on base in California. The 2 were both members of the LDS Church, and soon after meeting, they went to a temple in Arizona and got married in 1956. Jodi was one of 7 children to Florence and Jay. However, most sources state that there was only 5 other siblings, so 6 children total. But according to Jodi's niece, Jessie Hildebrandt, as well as Jodi's own speaking at her seminars, there were 7 children total, but there was some sort of tragic death early on in the family, and it just destroyed enjoyed the parents, Jay and Florence, so much that no one really talks about it, but I do believe that it was another brother. Jodi had 4 older brothers and 1 older sister, making her the youngest in the family. Jodi would describe her childhood and family structure as fairly rigid and stereotypical. They were strongly involved in the LDS Church. However, her home life would have her questioning the Mormon faith on a couple different occasions. Jodi said that in her house, her and her siblings were not really able to, quote, emote. And what she didn't realize until later on in life was that her parents were both emotionally shut down, which didn't allow them to be emotionally available for the kids and Jodi and her siblings. And because of this, the house was just in chaos. And the only thing that the kids could emote was just get angry because they were stuffing their feelings down on the inside. As you can imagine, being the younger sister of 4 boys, they were kind of rough, constantly wanting to wrestle Jodi. And because of the fact that they were never taught where to place their emotions, and that Jodi was unable to place her emotions, she wasn't able to be like, I'm not wrestling today. Like leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah, fuck off.
So instead, she was known to be a tough cookie as a kid and just really went along with go with the flow.
The rough housing.
She
was rolling with the rough
housing. Jodi attended Canyon del Oro High School, a public school in Oro Valley, Arizona, north of Tucson. She was on the girls basketball team, which actually went undefeated 28-0 and took the school's first state championship in girls basketball. She graduated in 1986. After graduation, she moved to Salt Lake City, Utah to attend Rick's College, which I think was an off branch to Brigham Young, but it's now Brigham Young University. So I don't know. I think it was like a junior college, but now it's recognized as BYU.
We've talked about this case Rick's College in another case
I feel like we have to.
Where is it at again?
In Salt Lake City.
Oh, okay.
It's now Brigham Young University, but it was like a junior college, and I think they kind of just like adapted it. Do you know what I mean?
Like they just kind of merged.
Yeah. There she played basketball for 1 year, and then she transferred to Utah Valley Community College for another year. At some point in this timeline, Jodi would talk about in her current day seminars about suffering from an eating disorder, and she sought out some counseling around this time. And it was during these sessions that she realized her home life and childhood may have not been all that great, and when she was making those connections about her parents being emotionally shut down. And it was also during this time that we can assume Jodi developed an appreciation and an interest in counseling. She takes some time off of school for reasons that are unknown and ends up enrolling into college for the 3rd time into BYU's arts program. She was also competing in pageants. She was in the Miss Orem pageant in 1990. Yeah. There isn't a lot on Jodi's private adult relationship life, but what we do know is that during her time at BYU, she married Brenton Pogge, and shortly after became pregnant with her first child. I would assume that the two met at church and or school, as both were active members of the LDS Church. In 1994, she had her first child and then got pregnant again shortly after. Her family life, specifically her children, are pretty private, therefore I'm not going to be naming them this episode. Jodi and her husband, Brenton, were growing apart pretty early on into their marriage, but the two struggled with the ideation of divorce within the church because, like we said, with Mormon beliefs, you are eternally
You're
married,
locked in, babe.
even in the afterlife. They did end up divorced about 7 years after they got married, though, and Jodi said that this destroyed her because she was taught about divorce and how it's evil and wrong. So when she separated with Brenton, she felt like she didn't receive any sort of support, and when she was pretty much alone in the whole ordeal, like people were kind of looking at her like, you're divorced, kind of thing. While being a mother of 2 young ones, Jodi did graduate with a Bachelor of Arts in English Language and Literature from BYU in 96. It wasn't until 1999 that Jodi would further her education and pursue a Master's of Arts in Educational Psychology from the University of Utah. We can assume this break from undergrad to grad was because of the divorce and having 2 young kids and just dealing with a lot, but we don't know what that break was. I would assume.
I would assume that she's going to have to take a break through that. Yeah.
She graduated in 2003, and this is when Jodi's life started shifting. 2 years before graduation, Jodi started working on her thesis. She sat down with her professor, or she refers to it as her chair, which is like common lingo in grad school. And her professor, Karen M. Maloney, asked Jodi what she wants her master's thesis to be about. Jodi talks about this conversation, how she got that idea from her thesis in a lot of her seminars. And each time she tells it, it kind of shifts to a more like Jodi-esque perfect story every single time. But the first time she told it, this is the story she told. She sat down with Karen, and to preface this, Karen did know that Jodi was LDS, and apparently this wasn't something that was as discussed at the University of Utah as it would be at BYU. I don't really know why. It was just kind of like you didn't really disclose it. No one really asked. No one really cared. But Karen did know that Jodi was a member of the LDS church, so we could assume that the two of them like had a pretty close relationship. So she asked Jodi in the sit down if Mormons are allowed to masturbate. Jodi had never been asked that question, and she didn't really have an answer. And this would eventually lead Jodi to her master's thesis. Now, I have some thoughts on that, but we're going to talk about that next week.
That's a crazy question to ask.
Yeah, it's kind of inappropriate.
Yeah.
Her master's thesis was titled Experiences of Latter-day Saints Women and How Their Culture Influences Their Manifestations of Sexuality, which is a bold thesis as an LDS woman in Utah. The thesis was presented at the Sunstone Symposium in 2001, and I believe this is kind of like a stand-up and like talk and present thesis, like a TED talk kind of.
Like a presentation.
And I think the Sunstone is for the Mormon community specifically.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure. According to the sunstone.org, this is the blurb about her thesis, because I was not listening to the hour-long recording of it. But if you would like to, the hour-long recording of it is on the website if that is something that you wanted to hear. They do have a disclaimer about how the author is in violation of their code of conduct and to listen with discretion. But this was posted January 1st, 2001. So it's a recording of her presenting it at the symposium. The experiences of LDS women and how their culture influences manifestations of their sexuality. This presentation is a progress report on the data that I have collected so far in my research on the sexuality of Mormon women ages 30 through 50. It contains both quantitative and qualitative analyses, and I will include several findings that have caught me somewhat by surprise. In particular, I have begun to note differences in attitudes towards sexuality in women who were raised LDS, yet taken to church by relatives and friends, in contrast to attitudes of those who had a more traditional Mormon upbringing. I have always found striking remarks made by women about how much of the language used to describe sex and intimacy, especially when they were teenagers, has negatively affected their feelings about their own sexuality. All of the women in her thesis were anonymous, and they were given code names. Even if they didn't care to be anonymous, Jodi still gave them names and kept their opinions private. It's long, it's boring. Listen if you want to. After grad school, according to her LinkedIn, Jodi began working at Cirque Lodge in 2003. Cirque Lodge is an exclusive and private drug rehabilitation program that's located in the mountains of Sundance, Utah. It is thought to be one of the nation's best drug treatment centers. Jodi was the program director from 2003 until 2007. And during this, she got her counselor license in the state of Utah in 2005. So while working as a program director, she obtained her counseling license. After leaving the Cirque Lodge in 2007, Jodi created Connexions. The majority of its foundation, baseline, principles is strongly based on her 5 years of experience at Cirque Lodge. But what is Connexions? Connexions was a solution for anybody that was experiencing feelings of pain relating to relationship problems, anxiety, fear, depression, etc., you name it. And according to JodiHildebrandt.com, the core teachings of Connexions is that for a person to achieve true connection with another human being, they must not be in distortion. Distortion is a broad term defined by Jodi. By taking her course, people learn that they are in distortion by the following: being addicted to your spouse, work, shopping, electronic games, sleep, social media, driving, getting compliments, exercise, eating, drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, hobbies, entertainment. The things you can become addicted to are endless. You can be in distortion if you are living in shame and denial, knowing that you are not enough, being codependent in your relationship, living in lust, being sexually attracted to your spouse, and controlling and manipulating others. Jodi's motto is that everyone, including you, me, the besties, are in distortion. And by joining Connexions, she can help us, or the common day people, overcome this and finally live in truth. Jodi teaches that 3 core principles must be developed in order to truly connect with anyone and avoid distortion. If you or others do not practice these principles, then they are considered to be in distortion. So boundaries need to be set to distance yourself from these individuals so you are not drawn into distortion with them. These core principles of connection are impeccable honesty, rigorous personal responsibility and humility.
I've failed.
I
Tattoo it on my forehead.
I'd be going to a lot of classes.
Distortion.
Yeah, distortion.
That's my first, middle, and last name.
Yes. At first, it was just one-on-one sessions between Jodi and her clients, along with hiring other counselors, therapists to work under her at her practice. One of these employees was a local therapist, also a member of the LDS Church, Brannon, who Taylor gave you a quote from in the beginning, from the documentary. According to Brannon, it was around 2011 that Connexions began taking off, but it was no longer in the one-on-one style that it was before. Jodi had launched a channel in the form of this podcast, YouTube show, radio show, where people would submit topics that they needed advice on. Basically, she had an Ask Me Anything.
Right, pretty much, yeah.
Advice column. But at the same time, she had these detailed lesson plans where she would dive in on certain topics. On top of that, she would then host what she called Connexions classrooms, where she would have 20 plus people in these Zoom meetings that she would have group sessions with. And this became very popular very quickly, and her following was growing quickly, specifically within the LDS Church. One of the things that drew people to Jodi, according to the interviews within the Hulu documentary, was her confidence. You could come to her with an issue, explain it in detail, but clearly be unsure about the next moves and searching for some sort of direction. And as if she had been training for that day her entire life, Jodi had this ability to firmly give you a game plan within minutes, it seemed. So you go to a problem, Jodi's like, here's what we're gonna do.
Right, like as if she's been thinking like, well, I've been thinking about if this situation were to come up, what was I gonna do?
Right.
Like exactly.
She had the game plan. So people trusted her, especially Mormons, because she understood. She was a Mormon, a mom, and a professional. It's the type of confidence that you want when going to a counselor. A lot of the time it seemed, especially with 99.99% of her clients being Mormon, that there were certain topics that would come up in her sessions or on her show more than others. Specifically pornography and sex addiction. No shocker there if you were on TikTok during the rise of Mormon mom talk. We know this shit all too well.
Soaking, anyone ever heard of it?
Swinging.
Yep.
And as we know, Taylor Frankie Paul.
No, who?
And as we know from her 2001 master's thesis, this was something that she had been focusing on for years at this point. So in 2012, with her following and influence growing more and more by the day, it was no shock that she became the director of Lifestar Utah County. This was a franchise of a national company based out of Utah that specializes in the psychiatric and psychological treatment of pornography and sex addiction. Very quickly, Jodi was hosting conventions where hundreds of people would show up and listen to her speeches, lessons, and advice. These events and her followers were mainly women because she actually empowered them to great degrees as women, Mormons, mothers, wives, and so much more, while also talking about more taboo topics within the church and in society in general at that time. You have to remember this is the early 2010s, and though mental health was slowly becoming a bit more accepted and understood, it wasn't as openly talked about as it is today. Jodi made these women feel so incredibly seen. She talked about depression and anxiety in a way that had really never been done before, especially in the church. And she wasn't encouraging these women to just pray it away. She would actually give solutions with confidence, which, like we said, was her entire brand, but still doing it in a way that was respectful to the church, honing in on what Brannon calls Mormon anxiety of being pure, sinless, and perfect. Connexions went from being just therapy and turned into a community for these women. And a very active member of this Connexions community was Paige, Ruby Franke's best friend. In fact, she was actually a Connexions coach, meaning she and the other coaches had gone through training with Jodi and became leaders within the community.
After hearing all about Jodi and Connexions from Paige, Ruby had watched several of Jodi's videos, done her research on Jodi, and was really ready to dive in head first. But Kevin was not all that convinced. So in October of 2019, Ruby and Kevin went to a Love versus Lust workshop Jodi was hosting with Connexions. And it was at this event that Kevin remembers seeing Ruby truly buy in. Like, she went from being a bestie to OG pick-me cult type shit in CNC terms. Kevin said in an interview that Jodi and Connexions, quote, validated things that had been bugging her, Ruby, for a long time, especially for how lost they were with Chad. So it was like, for the first time, with the confidence and conviction that Jodi gave her and just exuded, someone had finally handed her the roadmap, the solution. And that was Jodi. She could fix him. But what Kevin didn't realize until after this workshop, when Ruby sat him down, that it was actually more than their son that Ruby was looking to fix. She told Kevin that, quote, she was concerned about their marriage and she would like to invite him to join a Connexions men's group because Ruby felt that bettering her marriage and her husband would help them to better Chad. So Kevin agreed, like any good husband and father would. This men's group was one of those Connexions classrooms that Morgan discussed. So they were essentially like a group of men on Zoom with Jodi. And the first one that Kevin joined, Jodi began the session by asking, who wants to get us started? One of the men said, I'll check in. And according to Kevin, began just kind of listing off all of these things in his life, which is when Kevin realized that this was actually an addiction support group. Addiction to everything though. But most of these men were there because of their addiction to pornography and would report that they had relapsed. And Jodi would look at this man that just, or whoever it was, that just confessed that they were relapsing and would say, quote, look at Kevin. He makes choices every day that are responsible and he stands up and he's a man. And this really boosted Kevin's ego. Jodi actually made him feel good and confident, which is something that he had candidly talked about the entire documentary, being insecure, and something that we talked about in the beginning when they had first started courting. What felt the best to him, though, was the way that his wife was now looking at him. Ruby was looking at him like a knight in shining armor, quote, the way I'd always wanted her to look at me, he said. He went from being this like skinny, timid guy to really getting his confidence. He was getting into the gym, getting buff, and to Kevin, he and Ruby's marriage was the best it had ever been. Quote, there was this shared passion for one another. Our relationship felt better, so much less conflict. There was purpose again. And together they made the decision very quickly, like this all happened within weeks, just so you know, that yes, Jodi was the solution to their son. So they reached out to her and they set up Chad's first session with her, which started off as just being a once a week meeting. And after every single call, Jodi would have a meeting with Ruby and Kevin one-on-one to talk about their homework, which included sort of like parenting tips and suggestions for punishment, etc. But after several weeks with Chad only rebelling more and becoming more and more distant from the family, it was time for drastic measures to go into effect. It got to the point that Ruby, Kevin, and Jodi sat down with him to let him know that he was one strike away from being sent to a Virginia military boot camp until he was 18. Chad talks about this in that documentary, and he says that this was like a turning point for him because the thought of going to a military boot style camp, he was like, hell no, it scared the shit out of me. And he decided right then and there that he was going to pull it together. Around this time, he also went to 2 meetings a week with Jodi instead of just the one. And everyone, even their followers, could see that the family was starting to get back to who they were before. Things were lighter, more positive, and they truly felt like they were getting back on the right track. Ruby and Kevin's marriage was the best it had ever been. Ruby was way more calm, down to earth, and mindful, I guess is the best way to put it, considering she and Kevin were really implementing Jodi's lessons and practices into their everyday life. So instead of just like getting angry about something and flying off the handle, because when you have 6 kids, of course you're gonna fly off the handle, she would, talk with terms that Jodi had taught her and like tactics, like calming down tactics in terms of like getting the kids to level back out before, she had to put the hammer down. Kevin says in the documentary that both he and Ruby were just blown away with everyone's progress in the family and really gave all props to Jodi for turning this all around. It wasn't long after they began working with Jodi that she, quote, incorporated them, according to Paige, Ruby's best friend. Ruby became a regular speaker and eventually a coach at these workshops, just like Paige, specifically though the ones that focused on parenting, as well as Kevin, but he would mainly do a lot of the men's club things, which is when they began becoming the faces and voices of Connexions, Jodi's right-hand people. The reason for this was because of their honesty when discussing incredibly vulnerable things, even including their sex life. And by the end of spring or early summer of 2020, with this happiness back in their lives, they moved into this brand new huge house and their YouTube channel is at its peak. They have over 2.5 million subscribers and over 1 billion total views. They were on a high and racking in the cash, over $100,000 monthly. And that is where it all changed. In late May 2020, Ruby posted a video on 8 Passengers where she and Chad were sitting together on the floor leaning against a wall. This is a clip that you have all probably seen. And they were discussing punishment for the children. Ruby explains to the camera, quote, "In our house, when we take something away, it's because they have shown that they are not responsible enough to manage it. And so we don't just turn around and give it back to them as soon as they start acting good." As she finishes up this sentence, Chad's holy, kind of making a comment and, being like, "No, you don't," agreeing with her. And she turns to Chad and she says, "Have you ever been given something back in less than 6 months?" To which Chad says, "No, my bedroom was taken away for 7 months and you just gave it back a couple of weeks ago." And as he says this, Ruby is snickering and smiling ear to ear before almost cackling as she says, "I don't think our viewers know that." Sherry, the oldest, can be heard in the background saying, "Yeah, you've been sleeping on the beanbag." When Chad says, "Yeah, I've been sleeping on the beanbag since October and they gave me my room back 2 weeks ago." Ruby, still cackling, shakes her head, smiling in agreement. As Chad continues, Blank's phone, so one of the youngest that we're not going to use their full name, has been taken away since December. And when this video goes out, it changes everything because, again, it's May 2020 and we now have TikTok. But more specifically, we have pandemic TikTok. Mm-hmm. Pandemic TikTok
was its own thing.
You had to be there. It was its own beast. During the pandemic, TikTok moved videos, topics, trends faster than any media platform has ever done before. Things were more viral than they had ever been before. It was because they were so easily accessible on an international level. And this is also at the peak of cancel culture. It was a had to be there type of thing, but it changed society.
The world was frozen, and that was our one way of feeling
keeping
community.
It's moving. Exactly.
So everybody was there.
This clip took TikTok and the internet by storm. The Frankies, but more specifically Ruby, were getting canceled at a rate that they never knew was possible. There was even a Change.org petition that was launched reporting perceived child abuse and neglect against the Frankies. They were frantic, devastated, and scrambling to try and get past this. And in the scramble, they took the video down, which is a damn death sentence in today's day and age. Ruby was making headlines, no longer as the loving Mormon all-American Utah mom, but as a monster and an abuser, with hundreds of other clips being pulled from their backlog of videos where people showed off the dark side of Ruby Franke. They were losing brand deals, subscribers, and loyal OG followers faster than they could keep up with. And the only engagement that they really were getting was incredibly negative and hateful. They hired a lawyer to advise them on what to do and how to handle this, and his specific advice was for Ruby to make an apology video. But she refused. This was her parenting style.
And that's also all it took then.
Yeah.
A heartfelt apology. A lot of followers
back then
would just come right back.
Yeah. The reason why she refused was because she said, this is my parenting style. Yes, it's strict, but it's by the book of Mormon. And the way that she was raised, nothing that she needed to feel sorry for. And to her, it was effective. I mean, look at the 180 that Chad had made with this type of punishment. Kevin said in the documentary that Ruby was raised with the understanding that love was obedience. And if you were not obedient, you were to be punished and shown the lack of love that you were exuding, very much an eye for an eye, Old Testament biblical shit, She wasn't sorry because, as she has always said, the purpose of her channel was to show the world what real parenting looked like in a real family. But here's the part that they were not prepared for. The worst part of this all. The Frankies lost 90% of their income virtually overnight because of the situation. They were circling the drain. However, Ruby never stopped posting. She just kept on and showed how she was handling this along with the family. She really turned to God and Jodie with the Connexions community to carry them through this. And it was at this point that the kids, as discussed in the documentary, began seeing a different side of their mother. Chad says, quote, "She went kind of from a fun, energetic, laughable mom to a more serious religious teacher." And on the channel, this shift was evident. In one of the videos Ruby posted, she discussed the hit they had taken to their finances promises and how, quote, when things go awry, it will always bring you back to home base. Ruby began focusing more on her faith and her family's faith as the center of these videos. Lots of tears that the channel really hadn't seen before was a part of this. And then she shifts from that PR mindset of just, pushing through it and keeping on to sort of addressing the situation. However, in a way of doubling down on it, which is a fucking PR nightmare. Like, if they had a publicist, the publicist literally would have had a heart attack at this situation.
For sure.
In one of the videos, she says, quote, this is literally the way God intended our children to be raised up. Continuing to defend her discipline style, saying that all of these incidents that were going viral were, quote, taken out of context. It was pretty much with the posting of this doubling down video, paired with the furious comments and ever declining numbers, that she just kind of stopped caring about the YouTube channel. She couldn't allow herself to give a shit about 8 passengers anymore. And behind the scenes, it was because she was already prepping for her next move, one that was in tandem with Jodi, because through this devastation, they had become even more of a team and closer. And the Connexions community was backing Ruby and Kevin 100% because this was the truth. This was the way. People looked up to them for doubling down and not letting, quote, the culture or society impact the way that they choose to raise their family in the eyes of God. It was at this point that the YouTube channel changed from 8 passengers to the title Moms of Truth. Ruby then created a new Facebook group and community also titled Moms of Truth, and she invited literally every single person in her following list, and specifically, like, she found everyone on Facebook in their neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods and invited all of them to join it. And just like that, they had thousands of followers before their first post was even made.
So now everything is under Jodi's Connexions business also, which from an LLC liability and rebranding standpoint was pretty much the only way that this was going to work. They would open up their episodes by introducing themselves. Jodi saying, hi, I'm Jodi, the founder of Connexions, and Ruby saying, and I'm Ruby, Jodi's sidekick. Eventually, Ruby addresses the elephant in the room, saying, quote, if you're wondering where I have been that I am not vlogging, I'm saving my kids, end quote. With both her and Jodi crying and holding each other as she discussed it, she realized that no amount of money, specifying that she was making millions, was worth having her kids being, quote, hurt by entitlement in the world's opinion, blaming herself by adding that she wasn't protecting them. However, that is not to say that they were not still posting 8-passenger style vlogs, because she still was, just not daily anymore. So people were still seeing their lives, but it was more censored to protect the children. Now, Moms of Truth begins to have this very drastic shift as 2020 was coming to an end. They began prepping their followers for the second coming, along with their usual content. They were vlogging their food and supply storage, with the majority of it being at Jodi's home in St. George, Utah, but more specifically just outside of St. George in Ivins. And I use the term home very lightly because this place was a freaking mansion. 4 stories, 2 of which were underground, 5 beds, 6 bath, almost 9,000 square feet, and on a 1.43 acre lot, meaning they had minimal neighbors. It had an outdoor pool with a red rock slide leading into it, a jacuzzi off the side of the pool, huge outdoor kitchen, fire pit, rock spa, outdoor shower area, floor to ceiling, entire wall windows on the back half of the house with skylights scattered throughout the home. I would move in.
I know.
I'll buy it.
I wish I could put the link, but I can't.
Yeah.
I can't blow anyone's spot like that. That's illegal.
Yeah. The main floor had 12 to 15 foot ceilings, a gourmet kitchen, and a butler's pantry. 5-foot horizontal fireplaces in the primary suite, walk-in closets in the primary with the laundry room off to its side with custom built-ins.
Let me tell you something. You want me to have my custom built-in walk-in closet with the laundry room set off to the side of it with my giant window wall that I could walk out to my jacuzzi, fire pit area?
I'll be there. A freestanding luxury soaking tub and primary bathroom with a shower and a steam room.
I'll be there.
And a mother-in-law suite with its own private entrance and several sitting living rooms, all on the main floor. I mean, we could go on, especially considering it's for sale right now and listed on Zillow with all the pictures you could ever want. Either way, back at the Frankie house, almost 4 hours north in Springville, Ruby was vlogging her food prepping while quarantined with her family. Now, the reason for the shift to doomsday prepping was because people were genuinely thinking this was about to be the second coming. Not just people in Connections, like a lot of people on the internet.
Worldwide. Yeah.
Like this was, crazy.
During the pandemic.
A plague, fires, rioting, and even a 5.7 earthquake on the west side of Salt Lake City. And as the leaders of Connections, Jodi, Ruby, and Kevin felt that it was their duty to be guides for their followers, which was totally virtual until May of 2021, when Jodi called Ruby and Kevin hysterical, asking for help, as she believed her house was haunted. And her bishop, who had been blessing and cleansing the area, didn't know what else to do. Not wasting a minute, Ruby and Kevin, along with Chad and at least one other kid, jumped in their car and they rushed down to Jodi's. This was the first time that they had ever seen Jodi's home, and they were amazed by it, but also scared, especially when they learned that right in her backyard was a canyon that is mostly referred to as Kayenta Canyon. However, its true name is, quote, hellhole, and allegedly has lots and lots of lore. While there, some supernatural and unexplainable things do happen, but for the most part, they just felt like Jodi was kind of going stir crazy, being in this massive home in the middle of nowhere all on her own. So they invite Jodi to come stay with them at their home in Springville for a while to help her, which she agreed to. The family, along with Jodi, hop into their cars after packing up her things, and they drive back home, calling Sherry, the oldest child, on their way and telling her to pack up her room and move into the basement, as Jodi would be needing her room to stay there. This was no big deal, and actually, everyone was really excited about it because the kids loved Jodi. And I say it wasn't a big deal for Sherry also because she was set to move to college at BYU in the next 2 weeks anyway, so her room kind of needed to be packed
she was
up.
like, it's probably already packed.
Yeah. But here is the thing. This had to be a big secret because 1, Jodi could not be seen as weak by her clients and her followers. And 2, it literally risked her licenses to be moving in with a client's family. Because remember that she started off as and still was Chad's therapist. Fast forward to end of summer 2021, Jodi was still living with them, virtually meeting with her clients, hosting her weekly meetings, including the men's club, and she and Ruby are still hosting and posting on Moms of Truth. And Jodi is still serving as Chad's therapist, having sessions whenever they are needed, but at least one-on-one weekly. Jodi and Ruby's friendship is growing, and they are literally inseparable. However, this is where problems with the 2 youngest children begin to arise, R and E. This had been a problem that first came about during the main quarantine. So Ruby thought that having Jodi there to work with the kids in real time would help, but it just wasn't helping. They were being rude. They were talking back and specifically acting this way towards Ruby and eventually even Jodi. This was unacceptable. So together, Jodi and Ruby decided on what their punishment would be.
And this is where it all comes crashing down for a second time. When the Chris's 2021 vlog was posted, followed by the Mothers or Moms of Truth meeting, the public learned what R and E's punishment was. No Christmas, because Santa did not visit the bad kids, only the good ones, which Ruby spoke very openly about, and even some of the most loyal followers, and even some of their most loyal, oh God,
Loyal follower.
Here we go. Which Ruby spoke very openly about, and even some of their most loyal followers were enraged. But once again, Ruby and now Jodi doubled down, bringing the 2 of them even closer than they were before. And yes, Jodi is still living with them, especially when in early 2022, the YouTube channel Moms of Truth, formerly 8 Passengers, was suspended, which sort of began taking a toll on Ruby and Kevin's marriage, considering that most nights Ruby and Jodi would have sleepovers in Sherry's old room. However, it really all came to a head in July of 2022, when Jodi encouraged Chad to tell Ruby what he had been sharing and confessing with her during their therapy sessions. Now, mind you, he's 17 at this point, and that was he had been kissing and making out with girls secretly and using his laptop in the home to watch porn. Ruby was fucking distraught, hysterical, sobbing, and heartbroken. But in the middle of her sobbing, she just stops. She wipes her tears and she says, "It's you. You are the one who has been bringing all of this dark energy into not only Jodie's life and home, referring to the supernatural experiences that took place back at Jodie's house, but also with your youngest siblings, referring to RNE's current behavioral issues. So I think it's time, Chad, that you move out of the home. Mind you, again, 17. At this point, it was only Jodi, Ruby, and the 5 youngest kids, because Sherry was at BYU and Kevin was at work, because this all went down midday on a weekday. So Ruby sent Chad up to his room to start packing his things immediately and went into Jodi's room, aka Sherry's old room, to just kind of like talk and get a game plan of what they were going to do. When she and Jodi came out, Kevin was just getting home from work, and he walks in to like Chad packing boxes in the foyer of the house. Ruby like comes down the stairs and she's like, "Hey, I need to talk with you." And he's like, "Okay." And she just tells him outright, "You're going to be moving out of the house too, because our marriage is in the worst position that it's ever been in. And your actions, Kevin, were not of a role model for our children, and probably the reason that Chad's doing all these sinful things." She tells him that he will move out and not speak to her or the children until she says it's okay. And that is going to be when she's fully convinced that he's back on the right track. And Kevin just says, "Okay." And he starts packing. Kevin sat down with each of the children one-on-one and explained that he would be gone for a little while, but he would come back when he was a better man and a better father to them, calling Sherry to tell her the situation too. And Sherry is so confused, so she like calls her mom to try and like figure out what's going on, and they kind of get into like a little argument about this, which only makes Ruby even more mad. So she cuts Sherry off too, saying that if she insists on having contact with her father and her brother, that she would not be supporting her or the family. So she was out. Chad moved into an apartment just beside the local university, and Kevin moved into a townhome, with the only communication or tie that they had back to their family being their weekly sessions with Jodi.
And now another thing about Jodi's Connexions classes, because when you're in distortion, you have to distance yourself from anyone else that's also in distortion. So you cannot communicate with that person. So therefore, yeah, Chad and Kevin were getting kicked out, but Chad and Kevin could not even talk.
No, they're getting iced out. Like, yeah. Kicked out's one thing. They literally have no contact with anyone.
They're not even with each other. The two that were isolated
they were not allowed to speak.
Not with Sherry.
Anything.
No one was allowed to talk to anybody. Now left in the Springville house are Ruby, Jodi, and the 3 youngest daughters, J, A, and E, and the youngest son, R. Ruby is working as a mental health coach in a more official way at Connexions, and together they launched their new YouTube channel called Connexions, to coincide with their Instagram page that was formerly 8 Passengers, now taken over as Moms of Truth, right? She changed the Instagram page.
It in 2022.
The videos continued coming out and the kids were in them still. It was clear though, something had changed. They were preaching about loving principle more than their children, how important it was to not give into the wokeness for the sake of your children. Ruby was saying things like, and this is an exact quote from a video shown on the documentary, "Your woke child is a walking zombie, and you have an opportunity to wake that zombie up." It also became clear that Ruby and Jodi were filming out of Jodi's house in Ivins, and it was dark. Everyone could see it. Who they weren't seeing on these videos anymore, though, were the kids, and people were extremely worried. But no one could have even prepared themselves for the truth of the horrors that would come to light.
Which is where we're going to pick up in part 2 next week, where we talk about what was really happening.
Behind the veil. Dun, dun, dun. I have so much to say, but we're not gonna.
Yeah, you know, what we can say are the things that we're not gonna have time to say next week, and that is that this could have been a really positive thing. You know what I mean? Like,
had so much potential.
This had so much potential. What happens here?
Jodi, like, just based on her thesis, like, the good thing that could have came out of that thesis versus creating Connexions was that you were finally talking about how LDS women can't even speak on sexuality, what makes them feel good, what's good, like, can you masturbate? She had an
opportunity,
and she took her thesis and was like, it really negatively impacts a lot of LDS women because they have so many questions, they want to learn more, but they can't talk about it. And that right there was like groundbreaking in the church. And it could have been so much better. You could have taken that. You could have taken Connexions, but instead you became
a psycho. You lost your fucking mind.
Yeah.
It got to their head, both
Power.
of them. And Ruby could have made her family millions and millions and millions of dollars, and every kid could have gone to college, paid off completely from this YouTube channel.
Could have had houses.
They could have all had houses that were given to them when they were turned 18, because that's the amount of fucking money these people were bringing in, like millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But instead of just it got to them. They were their own worst enemies together.
Yeah.
It's Ruby and Jodie against Ruby and Jodie.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
UVU. I'm sweaty.
So much to say.
Yeah, we're going to keep our mouth shut, though. Anyways, tune in on Tuesday to get you a TBB, little break from all this shit. I wonder what TBB is that week.
These killer moms.
That's this week. So
Mother's Day. We did it after. Or did we do that this week?
This week.
Oh,
advice column. It's a good one. It's a really good one. I haven't edited yet, but when we were recording it, we were like, this is a good one.
This is great shit. This is good stuff right here.
Every fucking month. So anyways, you got that coming good. You're not going to get a creepy account for a long while. So all you turds sit right and sit pretty. And then you got my new social series that's going to be coming out first episode next Tuesday on Crime House Instagram. So it's
TikTok.
Only on TikTok too. It's only on social media. So check that out. If you
comment.
You want to like, comment, subscribe. Don't cancel us.
Join our Patreon.
Join our OG Pick Me cult. You looking to join a cult? No need.
We got one
for you right here, babies.
Cult
You
of a
never told me what
lifetime.
you're the CEO of this week.
Oh, car maintenance.
Car maintenance.
I'm done.
Done. Was it 4? All 4?
All 4. I just don't understand when they call you and they're like, why do they have to speak to me like I'm an idiot? Like, they call me and they're like, ma'am, like, you're metal on metal grinding on your back brakes. Okay.
And?
What do you want me to do? I'm not a mechanic. You want me to get under there and fix it myself? Like, that's why it's there.
Right. Like, that's why I brought it in.
Like, what do you want me to do?
What do you mean?
They're like, well, it's going to be da 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 da. And I'm like, okay.
Okay, well, I just had 4 quarts of oil in my fucking 2-quart gallon.
Yeah. And
or
they
whatever.
And then I realized, because after I was like, gosh, that was so expensive. Oh, I got a alignment lifetime warranty.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know what I'm going to be doing?
Being there every week.
I'm going to make it a routine.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be my coffee on Saturday mornings, pulling in to get my alignment. Oh, hit a pothole. They're going to know my number.
They are.
I didn't sign off on a warranty. It was like a forced warranty with the tires. I don't know.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah, but it was just, I'm over. I told Aaron, I said, I'm done. I don't want any parts of any more car shit. Like,
no, I don't want to hear nothing
I don't
want to
know anything. You hear something, take it to the shop. Don't tell me about it. I don't care.
That's it. I don't care.
Don't care.
Well, you're CEO of Fire Tire, and I'm CEO of Hardee's. So,
Yeah.
hey, I mean, we're just good old working boys at the end of the day.
That's all.
And that's it. That's all that we're ever going to be. So we're going to let you guys go because it's late as hell. We're both on our periods. Maybe we'll be in much better. Oh, next week, new girls. You're not even going to know who the fuck hit you, bitch. I'm going to be like glowing, happy, beautiful. I'll get a few zits. It's okay. But I'll be proud to be alive.
Yes. Amen to that.
This week, don't even talk to me. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.